Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming. Please have a seat, and we're going to get started. Today we have the CEO of PhotoShelter, Alain Moreau, who will speak on innovative ways to sell photos online. His talk is going to cover the fundamental web marketing tactics, essential web design requirements, and critical features, plus some advanced concepts that will help photographers better utilize their website as a business and marketing tool and grow their online presence to best generate new business. I want to welcome all of you, welcome our live stream audience, remind you that there are photo exhibits on this floor and upstairs, and we also have printed matter and indie photo library presenting upstairs. There is an event tonight starting at 5 here at the Fairmont Battery Wharf that you're all invited to. Let me tell you a little about Alain. He's the CEO and co-founder of PhotoShelter, the worldwide leader in photography, portfolio websites, photo sales, marketing, and archiving tools for photographers. Alain previously served as a founding employee and senior vice president of engineering at hotjobs.com, where he assisted in the company's massive growth from a 4-person startup to a publicly held company with over 675 employees. He oversaw a staff of 50 engineers and was responsible for the development of hotjobs.com, SoftShoe, and a number of internal applications. Alain also serves on the board of the Eddie Adams Workshop, the leading student and young professionals photojournalism workshop. Alain is a graduate of Yale University and flosses daily. So without further ado, may I welcome the CEO of PhotoShelter, Alain Moreau.
I noticed some chuckles about flossing every day, but it's no joke, people. Hi, thanks for having me. That's the intro made this sound like it's going to be the most boring thing you're ever going to attend on a Saturday, beautiful afternoon. And in fact, it was, it's not Stella's fault. It's my fault for writing such a thing. The crappy thing about inviting like the business internet guy to your photo conference is that I don't really have any nice photos to show you. So you'll have to look at like really crappy photos and PowerPoint bullets and stuff like that. But let me introduce myself. Hello world, I'm Alain. I was born and raised in Honolulu, Hawaii. All right. Much to the surprise of my parents and myself, I matriculated to Yale University. When I got out of college, I moved to New York City to look for work, and I had had an interest in photography ever since I was a kid, junior high, photo club, and I was actually very fortunate to find a job at a photo magazine of everything, because I wasn't necessarily looking, I was a music major, so I wasn't necessarily looking to get back into photography. But that magazine happened to be Penthouse, which helped to rekindle my passion for photography. And after spending a few weeks there as a temp, I was actually a temp, laying out the November 1995 issue, which you might remember, I decided I couldn't bear to tell my parents that I was actually working at a photo magazine after they had generously paid my college education. So I said, you know what, I better go find something. And that happened to be 1995, and it was just around the time where this thing called the internet started to happen. And I went to a technical headhunting shop where I had a friend, a classmate was working, and he said, you should meet my boss. He thinks the internet's going to be something big. So I was like, I don't know what the internet is, let's go check it out. Well, turned out to be a pretty big deal. So that's what I've been doing for the past 17 years of my life on the internet. And some of the things that I want to share with you today are really kind of observations I've made along that time, because a lot of what we do online, trying to sell jobs or job listings or PhotoShelter accounts or whatnot, there's a lot of basics that come into play in how we market and sell products. Now, before I go any further, I want to let you know that this presentation is rated PG-13 or rated T for teen. I have a tendency to swear sometimes when I get excited. I see some people in the audience who look maybe a little more conservative slanting. That's not a judgment, but if you hear me swear, please don't judge me. All right, let's talk about selling photos online. So you want to sell more photos online. This lovely triptych happens to be something that hangs on my wall. Not only that, it was taken by the speaker who's following me, David Hilliard, who's actually very known for these triptychs and the diptychs. This was actually a photo that I bought when I decided that I was going to be an adult and invest in some art. So I went to one of these fancy schmancy Chelsea galleries in New York, one called Yancey Richardson, and I walked in, and I had never been to like a photo show as a prospective buyer. And I didn't know what I was supposed to do. And I guess there's like a list with prices, and everybody's kind of like, well, here's the price list. And I wasn't sure how I was supposed to say, hey, I'm interested in this. Where's the barcode scanner or whatever we do to buy this thing? And it ended up being kind of not a very pleasurable experience. And it's sort of like when you walk into a store and nobody's in there but you, but nobody pays attention to you, and you're like, what is going on? There's nobody in this store. And I felt like that because I've always had a tendency to look a little bit younger than I actually am. And when I went into this gallery, I was like, nobody is paying attention to me, and yet I am interested in this piece of art here. And this sort of got me thinking about all of these different impediments that you have when you're trying to sell, whether it be online or not. The storekeeper's not paying attention to you. You can't find the prices, et cetera, right? A similar thing happened last night at the opening here. There's a lovely photo, an X-ray photo of I'll call them hand positions, that caught my eye. And I said, wow, there's a price under that. It's right over there, by the way. A photographer by the name of Anthony Smith. And I did this cool little thing with Instagram. You see how I'm playing with the shadows there in a similar hand position. And I said, you know what, I'd love to buy this. And despite the fact that there are prices on all of these pieces, they're not actually for sale here at the show. So once again, I was ready to pull the trigger, but it was kind of a tease because I can't actually buy them, right? This is kind of like people who go to your website, see a photo, and they're like, wow, that's really cool. I wish I could buy that. And there's no way to buy it. And the only way they can figure out how to buy it is hit the contact link, then there's a form, and then there's some like weird scrambled letters that they have to type in to prevent spam, and then you're like traveling, and 2 weeks later they're like, I don't even know who you are when you respond, right? So part of the problem is that in a lot of cases it's difficult to buy online, and then the other problem is that there are no sales without marketing. That's a visual pun because these are sales. Okay, never mind. You got it? You got it? All right. This is actually the Boston Wharf, apparently. I found it on Flickr. So I'm trying to keep it very topical here. Okay, let's stop joking around. Let's start talking some specifics here. Selling requires a targeted audience. And this is kind of the approach, right? We're all interested in photography. We take some nice photos. We're like, I want to sell these photos. And you say, well, who do you expect to sell them to? Well, everybody. Doesn't everybody love photos? And the answer is no. Everyone is not your audience. You do want to constantly build your audience. So a couple questions to ask just to kind of, help you understand and gauge things. So, for example, do you shop at Old Navy or do you shop at Neiman Marcus? Those are two very different demographics, right? In price point, in the way that people want to be treated when they walk into the store, in the way that those brands present themselves in print advertising, in television advertising, and online advertising. Similarly, do you watch TV on your TV or do you watch TV on your iPad, right? We are trying to show you a segmentation of users and how different people congregate in different places and consume different things. Do you buy photos? Do you buy photo books? Do you buy photo magazines? And the interesting thing that I think we've become more and more aware of is that the way that we consume things is also part of our identity. So people, everybody that's wearing like a nice button-down shirt or a t-shirt and shorts or a skirt or pants, et cetera, these are fashion choices that we're making that also help define our identity. So similarly, when you're looking at potential audiences, are you the person who's going to the street art fair and selling a little 5x7 or 8x10 for $10, or are you trying to get into a gallery to sell your stuff for $3,000? Who is your audience? Who is your potential audience? And which audience do you want? This is my first unsubstantiated claim for the day, which is people don't impulse buy photography. When is the last time you were browsing online and you saw a photo and you bought it on the spot? Anyone ever done that? Okay. So buying art, if we consider photos as art, buying art is a commitment. And for me personally, like, if it's not framed, then I have to go to the frame shop and I have to decide how much of a matte I want and what color frame. It's too much choice. Whereas like on the wall, it's like, it's framed, it's got a matte, it doesn't have a matte, it's $150, it's $300. I'm ready to go. It's not for sale. Okay. The sales cycle can also be very protracted in that sense, right? People can say, this is a very nice image. Should I buy it at the 8x10 or the 11x14 or the 20x30? How am I going to frame it? Where am I going to put it? There's a whole set of decisions that have to be executed in someone's head before they buy photography. And therefore, this idea of remarketing, which is you're constantly in that person's face, becomes very important. You can't just be like, oh, I heard this guy speak at the photo festival. He had this really nice image. What was his name again? I can't remember. And then you're no longer in the market to buy that image, right? So you have to constantly be in front of people. And as Tina was saying with emphasis, that's part of the game that the photographer has to play. Like, how can I use my friends? How can I use social media? How can I use my website, my blog, to keep leveraging my presence so that people know who I am? I'm sure you guys have been on websites where you see somebody advertising and you're like, that's weird. I was just on that website. There's this whole thing called remarketing in search engine marketing, where everybody's heard of these cookies, right? So they're little anonymous tracking things that get stuck on your web browser. Well, so retailers will use cookies and they will be a part of an ad network. So if, for example, I went to the men's clothing site, bonobos.com, and I was browsing there, and then I go to the Huffington Post, I'm gonna see Bonobos ads. This is very interesting. It can really hit you over the head. It's like, oh yeah, I was looking for some pants. It can also be really annoying because if you bought the pants already, you're gonna keep seeing Bonobos advertising. This happened to me once when I was in the market for this thing called the TRX, which is this developed by Navy SEALs to help you exercise. And I was like, So I had this really protracted sales cycle where I was like, do I need, it's like $200, am I really gonna use it? Took me 3 months to pull the trigger. I pulled the trigger and I kept seeing the damn ads. I was like, I bought it already. Where's the button that says I bought it? Anyway, the point being, you need to get out in front of your audience in order for them to remember who you are. And it's also like the time in which we're ready to pull the trigger and buy something can be a very, very small window, right? So you, again, like hitting them on the head and it's like, I have $50 extra this month. Okay, I'll buy the pants, right? So about that marketing, a couple of things to remember in regards to the marketing. There's the offline stuff and these online things. And it's a lot of this stuff, the marketing and sales disciplines that we hate to think about as creatives because they seem so businessy in a lot of cases, right? So the offline things like brand identity, what is your logo for your business? And what is your look and feel? So these are actually two very different things, right? The logo is just like the bug, what they call the bug in graphic design, or the typeface that you chose. But what is the look and feel that you get when you go to your website? Is it like crazy background, or is it white and Spartan? Does it look like a gallery? Does it look like a brochure? Does it look like, a soccer mom's website, if you will? How are you spending money to direct market? More and more we understand, as I've said before, you have to hit people multiple times. So only going online isn't necessarily a formula for success. We've talked to a lot of photo buyers and photo editors, some of whom like to just get emails, some of whom like to get printed postcards. And so there's no tried and true formula that's gonna guarantee success. You need to be doing a lot of different things. It's funny, we also talked to some art buyers, and Stella could probably tell you this too, like when you go to an art buyer who deals primarily in printed matter, those people like to see printed portfolios because they want to see how the images look in print. Whereas ad agencies that are dealing with online stuff don't mind looking at iPads and actually like iPads. So a lot of photographers who are savvy and are going to see people will have both in their case when they go to see photo buyers. In-person marketing becomes very, very important as well. Like, how many industry people can you meet at the Flash Forward Festival? Guys from Humble Arts, people from the Indie Photo Book Library, Stella, people from Emphasis, etc. There are all these important people that play a role in the ecosystem of photography. It's not good enough to just kind of sit in the audience and be a passive observer if you want to get ahead, because so much about business is networking in the first place. Of course, we assume you have beautiful photographs, and if you don't, we hope you have the presence of mind to recognize that you don't have beautiful photographs yet, and you will improve on that, right? Online marketing, email marketing is so key. I get literally about 100 emails from various retail stores and people, et cetera, a day. And that's not including the spam that just automatically goes to spam, right? But it does become so potent for people to be able to open an email, see a few images, and then decide whether they want to click on the link or not. Search engine marketing and search engine optimization, we'll talk about these in a little bit. But let's look at the funnel for a second. Anybody ever take a marketing course and is familiar with the classic marketing funnel? A couple people, all right. Rather than walk you through this through the funnel, let me walk you through it this way visually. It's like when you walk by the Gap. You're at the mall, you see 1,000 people walk by the door. How many people of those 1,000 will actually walk into the Gap? 100, right? So immediately from 1,000 people, the funnel has narrowed to 100 people because of the number of people who are interested at that moment in going into the Gap and potentially looking or browsing at things. Now, this is an interesting phenomenon because getting into the store doesn't necessarily mean you're going to convert into a customer. For example, I've had girlfriends take me to Anthropology. And the first thing I do when I go into Anthropology is I look for the most comfortable couch, and I have a seat. I am not part of their addressable market, right? So again, the funnel narrows. I got in the door, I'm part of that 100, but I'm part of the 15% of guys that went into the Anthropology with their girlfriend, and so now you lost part of that, right? Well, what's the next step in that funnel? The retailers want you to browse the clothing, because if you don't look, you're not gonna buy in most cases, right? So you walk into the store, you maybe majored in graphic design, or you studied it, and you're like, oh wow, Gap has Pantone shirts. Pantone shirts. I'm gonna go look at the Pantone shirts. So you pull the Pantone shirt, you're like, this blue 18-4140 is so cool. Let me go try it on, right? So that's the next step. Retailers know that if you touch the clothing and you try it on, the propensity to want to buy goes up higher and higher and higher. They want to encourage you to go into the dressing room. So then you go into the dressing room. Like this, I found this on Flickr too. So this girl went into the Gap dressing room, was trying on things. She made some observations here. Note how one gray shirt can make you look skinny, while one red shirt makes you look pregnant. I personally noticed that the gray shirt was really form-fitting, whereas the red shirt was kind of baggy. So that might have contributed to it. But what do I know? So she's in the dressing room, she tries something out. Now, how many times has this happened to you? You're like, this gray shirt looks awesome. I'm gonna buy this. And you go out, and there's a really long line at the cash register. And you're like, peace. Forget it, I'm out of here, right? That happens all the time to me. I had to use the restroom before I started the speech. And I was waiting in line, and the line was really long, and there was not a whole lot of action, and I was like, peace. Don't need to use the bathroom right now, but use it later, right? So that has nothing to do with buying. I'm like, I'm gonna hold my biological functions because the line is too long. So think about like all the things that go back to this funnel. So let's go back to the funnel. Here we're back at the funnel, right? So now all of a sudden you understand all these points of conversion that the consumer has to go through to want to buy your print, right? So these are the ones that we know, all the Gap ones. Walk into the Gap, browse the shelf, try something on, go to the cash register, purchase. This particular funnel visualization is done by a guy named Adam Cohen, and I like it because it kind of takes in this whole internet thing into it, which is becoming a repeat customer, and then the advocacy part, which is something like writing a Yelp review. right? Online, we have this ability to publish almost immediately about how our experience was. We can tweet, we can Facebook, etc. And that creates a gigantic feedback loop. When you have the ability to advocate on behalf of brands or photographers who you really enjoy, it puts more people at the top of the funnel. You see a lot of wedding photographers using this because wedding photographers are essentially not a photographic sale, it's a sale of personality. Like, I want you to be a part of my day. You're gonna be seeing me from the moment I get into my wedding gown all the way to the part where I'm really drunk and I'm ready to go home. And so it's a relationship sale for wedding photographers, right? But the super savvy wedding photographers also collect the name of the bridal party beforehand, Facebook friend them, and when they get home from the wedding, they'll do a very quick edit of 30 to 50 images, right, at 4 a.m. in the morning, put them up on Facebook, and tag the faces immediately. So that when the bride and the groom and the bridal party wake up in the morning, the first thing they see are the photos from this photographer. And they can immediately go, that photographer is amazing, I want to hire them for my wedding. Advocacy goes back to the top. And all the people who were at the wedding or weren't at the wedding see this photographer has posted, right? So talk about really understanding the advocacy, the word of mouth component. What does this have to do with photography and selling? Well, here are kind of similar components, right? Somebody comes to your website, they need to browse through the photos, they need to be able to add images to the cart, they need to be able to purchase the image. Ideally, they would tweet about the sale and they would tell their friends about this amazing photo that they got. Maybe they'd take a photo of the photo hanging on their wall, etc. So how many of you have photo websites? And how many of you have sales capability from your photo website? Okay, so the funnel went really fast, right? Word of mouth really matters. Word of mouth really matters. Who saw this series of photos that went viral like a month or two ago, right? So this guy, I think his name was Jason Lee, made these really creative kind of photoshopped images of his kids. They went crazy viral. We posted it on our PhotoShelter Facebook page. And then, you know, talk about this gigantic feedback loop, but here's one of the comments, it might be hard to see, from Sharo Donahue. This is my sister's wedding photographer. He's fantastically talented. So happy to see him gaining exposure everywhere. So we didn't even know he was a wedding photographer, but now we know he's a wedding photographer. And she's advocating to say, like, this guy's so freaking awesome, you should hire him, basically is what he's saying, right? So you gotta be out there, you need to be marketing in order to sell. It's sort of like the tree falls in the forest, nobody hears it, right? You could have a really nice photo, but if nobody knows that it exists, how are you gonna sell it? We wanna constantly be improving our funnel as well, right? If 1,000 people walk by that gap, the most obvious way to make more sales at the bottom is to get 10,000 people to walk by that gap, right? It's like that restaurant that's on that corner, nobody goes to it, and then 1 block away, everybody goes to that restaurant. It's just more convenient. Who knows, right? So how do we improve the funnel? Well, a limited number of clients and a small list of leads, people who potentially are your audience, is a recipe for failure. I talk to a lot of photographers, full-time photographers, who say, I got this one great client, 75% of my revenue every year. It's like, that's the scariest thing in the world. And the way that budgets are working nowadays, like that one client says, sorry, no budget this year, and then what are you gonna do? Scramble for that, right? And it doesn't matter whether you're a full-time or a part-time photographer. You wanna diversify as much as possible. So you always have to be working to improve the size of the funnel, right? Top of the funnel, let's get it wider and wider. You also wanna work on improving the conversion of your funnel. If we had more dressing rooms, could we get more people in? If we had more cash registers at peak time, could we avoid people from bailing on the funnel? Totally, right? So think about activity that's relevant at each point in the funnel when you're thinking about online sales. So what are all the reasons I haven't purchased online in the past? And this isn't restricted to photo websites, this is just online buying, and I'm sure you can help add to the list. Site too slow. This is an endemic problem for photographer sites, particularly if you built a Flash website like 5 years ago, right? It's like loading, 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 soundtrack kicks in, still no images. Like, all right, okay. And then finally site loads, sucky image, wasting my time, out of here, right? Okay, this also bothered me. So you can't find what you're looking for. Now imagine if you went to Amazon.com and you're like, I really need to find, what's something obscure that I can think of? I really need to find a travel power adapter. I don't know what those are called, but I need to get one of those because I'm going away. And imagine if there was no search. Okay, so everybody who has a photo website, how many of you have search capability? A few. This is, what year is it, 2012? How many people search for something on Google today? I wake up, I find something to search for. It's like I can't get out of bed unless I execute a search and check my email, right? So it's crazy to me that we create these massive archives of like 5,000, 10,000, 100,000 images, and the only thing people can find on our website are like the 20 best images that we put into the gallery. It's the most ridiculous thing ever. Gotta have search, right? Didn't have my size. Again, we can extrapolate to the photo. Like, I wanted the 8x10, you only had the 5x7. Found a better price elsewhere. Too much choice is also a problem, right? Oh, there's so many images, I don't know which one to get. How about none of them? Weird shopping cart behavior. Sometimes when you go to like older sites or really sketchy sites, you can't figure out what's going on. You try to enter a coupon code, and there's like a security alert, and you're like, what the, right? And this is a classic one, which is you're ready to buy, you're like, $50, that sounds like a good deal, I'm ready to go. Check out, enter your zip code. $30 shipping, where's this coming from, right? I'm out of here. So a lot of the smart shopping cart design, as you've probably witnessed yourself, asks you for your zip code right when you hit the cart, so that there's no guessing about what the shipping charge is going to be when you finally get to that point where you're entering your credit card information. So tune up your website, people. Getting people to your website is really, really hard work. Convert them while you have them captive. So what do I mean? You're a photographer, you meet people at a show like this, you're handing out business cards, you're handing out little postcards, you spend like $1,000 a year printing these things up. And how many of those people are actually going to your website, right? It's like you hand out 1,000 and like 100 people actually visit. Well, once you're there, the worst thing you can do is have nothing for them to do except look at your 20 best images. The other thing that really pisses me off is like, here are my 3 galleries, they're wonderful images, and then you go to the About page and it says, to license these, go here. Go somewhere else where someone's gonna take 50% of the sale from me, because I can't figure out how to sell for my own website. It's different if you're David Hilliard and you have representation and you have edition prints, and there's a reason why you can't sell directly online. I understand that if you're a high-end art photographer, but most of us aren't. Most of us will happily sell an image for $500, and most of us will happily collect 100% of that $500 instead of giving 50, 60, 70% away to an agent. So what are some of the things that you can do to tune up your website? Number one, realize that your website is not an online portfolio. I think the first big wave of photographer websites happened right around the turn of the millennium. And it was at that point that a lot of people said, I'm taking my printed portfolio and I'm doing a literal digital translation online. So I had 30 images here and I'm putting up 30 images here, and I'm done, and I'm not updating it for like 2 years because it's too hard to do. That is not what a website is. A website is a marketing machine for your photo business. And the two things you have to consider: does it meet the needs of the audience you have and the audience you want? So again, to use David Hilliard, you go to David Hilliard's site, kind of a Spartan site. He has, by kind of era of photography that he's working on, he's got a little exhibitions page, he's got an about page. But for what he does, it satisfies the needs of the audience he has and the audience he wants, presumably, right? Whereas if you go to an event photographer's page or a wedding photographer's page, what they're trying to communicate to their potential audience and their existing audience is very different. What is it like to work with me? That's why so many wedding photographers are using videos now of them shooting at weddings, so you can see like, I'm fun, I'm cool, right? I know wedding photographers who have like tattoos all over their arms, and at first they said, I'm gonna try to hide those because I don't wanna scare people, but then they're like, no, this is actually what it's like. I have, what do they call them? Sleeves? Sleeves all over their arms, right? Features to consider on your website if you don't already have them. Well, I talked about searchability, that's huge. I also talked about e-commerce capability, that's also huge. Portfolio, I still think it's necessary, even if you have 100,000 searchable images online, to be able to segment those into the very best, which I will call the portfolio, right? You've got to be able to have private galleries to show specific clients that you're working for. You should be able to send high-resolution files from your website. It should be mobile and search engine optimization friendly, and it should have social media integration in it because it's so important nowadays. We're probably all on Facebook or Twitter or some combination of the two, and we can see the power of that, right? So if you built your website a long time ago, or you paid someone $8,000 and you're like, it doesn't do anything. There's so many options now, including PhotoShelter, that are very affordable that provide a lot of these things. So it's time, I think, to kind of look at the options out there and assess whether it's going to work for you. So this is my website, and this is an image that I took in Telluride, and it's available for sale in case you wanted to buy it. Have a nice green buy button in the upper left. So all of these things that we've studied by going to user interface conferences and observing how people are using the websites by looking at the analytics. Having a large image, having it really easy to buy, having prints, downloads, products, stock imagery, etc., all exist. Having a contextual, it's hard to see, but there's a green contextual checkout button that appears when you have something in your cart. So it's sort of like on Amazon when something's added to your cart and you see the number of items in your cart, right? So there are visual clues that we've become very, very used to that is the paradigm for selling online. And so it's a fallacy to believe that, oh, I'll just go build my own e-commerce thing. That makes no sense. It's the equivalent of building your own camera nowadays. There's so many factors to consider when building a website that I really encourage you to leave it to the people who do this full time. This is a website I really like. It's a photographer in New York named Emiliano Granado. He shoots a lot for like Converse brands. He's kind of a Brooklyn hipster photographer, if you will. But the reason why I like this website so much is because it's one of the few websites that I've seen that actually has a newsletter sign up on the homepage. Remember how I told you it's so hard to get people to your website, convert them while you have a chance? Well, conversion doesn't necessarily mean what we call a hard conversion in marketing, which is they bought something from you. Getting an email from a customer who gives it to you, that's a soft conversion, and it's not a bad conversion to have. Because Emiliano then, on a quarterly basis, emails this growing list of people. And they might just be fans of his photography, or there might be photo buyers, right? You don't know who's coming to your website. So you always have to be looking for these hooks to get them to come back to you, whether it's on your website or somewhere else. I did a search for Boston photographers last night, and one of the ones that I found was Dmitri Productions. Dmitri, are you here? Good, we can talk about him now. How bad does this website look? Right? Okay, so what's the problem here? I just think that the balance of text and the image and the look and feel of the website is very, very dated. It looks like a website that was developed maybe in the late 1990s. I have this image in my head of Dmitri showing up for a photo or video shoot. You probably have just formed that same vision in your head. Not the guy I want to hire for my job, right? Here's another one I found, Boston photographer, first page of the search results, Stanley Rowan photography. Full screen, nice colors, navigation on the right with exploding menus, has a really, really nice look and feel. Do I want to hire Stanley over Dmitri? The answer is, of course. That's a no-brainer for me. Now, again, we can't just unilaterally say like, oh, Stanley's website is better because it has a really, really large image. That's not how we're operating, right? The key thing that I said earlier was it has to be designed for the audience you have and the audience you want. So let me show you a website that I don't think is particularly good looking. It's a PhotoShelter website, but it is a site for military stock photography. I didn't know this niche existed, but it does. Think of like defense contractors who need like an image of a smiling soldier to sell like the newest bomb or something. So this particular photographer nails it. He has relationships with the military. He can go in on these training runs. I think he's been embedded before. He takes these images, he gets model releases, and the way that he presents the image, and with the phone number big at the top, meets the needs of his audience. So he doesn't need the kind of website that we saw on the previous slide. This website works just fine. Similarly, this is Cool Water Productions, Masa Ushioda, underwater stock photographer. This is also a PhotoShelter website. He sells a lot to textbooks. So textbook people who are trying to find images need the Latin name of the animal for veracity, for fact checking, right? And he also wants to present as much variety to show the breadth of his collection as possible. So he's not reliant on a single image. He's reliant on a primary image and then secondary images below. Randy Santos, DC stock images, has actually, it looks like one image, but it's actually a rotating slideshow, a very large size. He does very, very well with search engine optimization. He keywords his stuff to the hilt. He's also a master of marketing. So this is what happened. Somebody found his website, a calendar manufacturer found his website, and they said, we're looking for images of the Capitol. Do you have any? We want to use it for the month of March or whatever. And he said, boy, do I have some images of the Capitol, but also I have images for the rest of the year. And here are the images. I'm going to put them in a little light box for you. And because I know that the calendar goes from January to December, I'm going to show you images of the winter, moving into the spring, into the summer, into the fall. The result of that activity was that the publisher said, you know what, we're going to license all of your images for the calendar because it's simple. I don't have to deal with 12 photographers. I can deal with one. I can probably do a bundled deal together. And he consummated the sale. So he turned a single image into 12 or 13, how many months they use nowadays in calendars, 13 months or something. Brilliant. Really brilliant, right? He went beyond what the customer asked for. So providing, in a sense, providing superior customer service helped him win the deal. Laura Berman, Green Fuse Photography. I want to sell more photos. Well, what are you interested in? Well, I'm really interested in the environment and green, so she puts together a set of stock images that all have to go with the environment and green stuff. The interesting thing that we found is, we saw that one large image from that one website. So here's my unsubstantiated claim number 2. More images on the home page is good. What do I mean? Well, using a single image to represent the corpus of your work is pretty risky, right? What if I just don't like that image that you put on your homepage? Then all of a sudden you've lost me. The more impressive thing is anecdotally, when we look at our Google Analytics for some of our photographers who have multiple images on their homepage, what we call the site usage metrics, the time on site that visitors are spending, is higher when they have multiple images on the homepage. Because I think you're piquing people's curiosity and saying, I like those tomato plants, but I also like the little girl kind of looking at the vegetables, so I'm going to check those out. So I think we as humans have the visual capacity to really look at a matrix of images, find points of interest, and then figure out how we want to scan them. For that reason, it's an interesting test for everyone to see whether multi-image versus single image on your homepage helps drive more traffic on your site, better time on site, etc. So going back to what I said before, don't design your own website. This is what we did back in the day. Maybe you took a little web course in school. You're like, now I know Flash and Dreamweaver. I'm ready to build a website. Well, you're a photographer. You're not a user interface expert. You don't have a mound of data on which to base your assumptions. You only have your gut, which may or may not be correct. And you probably won't update the technology of your website frequently enough to remain current, right? It's sort of like if you built your own iPhone. Like that's not a very smart thing. It's smarter to buy an iPhone, have Apple give you all of the updates, and have all the app developers update the apps as the new iOS comes out. Anything that deals with technology, you got to outsource that as much as possible, in my opinion. Just deal with your marketing and your sales and the taking of photos. So case in point of like really poorly designed websites. I'm a New York bachelor, so I order a lot of food. This is a restaurant in my neighborhood of Tribeca. And let me try to describe this to you, what happens. So you go to this website, and these screens open, right? And then you hear Sting's Englishman in New York soundtrack start playing. I'm a huge Sting fan, but I can't for the life of me figure out why this particular music starts playing for a Korean restaurant. Now, when you go to a restaurant website, when I go to a restaurant website, there are 3 things I'm interested in. Let's see if I can remember them all, or I might be pulling one of those, which governor of Texas couldn't remember the 3 things? Okay, the 3 things I'm interested in: the hours of operation, the telephone number so that I can either order or make a reservation, and the menu. So we're on this homepage here. I see the menu link, so that seems pretty obvious, but I don't see anything that says the phone number. I don't see anything that says hours. So now I'm forced to click around, right? And it so happens that when I go to the menu as well, they've done this thing because they wanted to preserve the little screens where they have a little iframe in the center. So only the center part, which is like this really small piece, scrolls. So I can't see the whole menu even though I have a 27-inch monitor. I can only see like 5 items at a time. It's the most ridiculous user experience ever. It's so frustrating. We know, I mean, it's weird to see how user behavior has changed over time, but remember how we used to go from page to page to page? We don't do that anymore. We vertically scroll. We scroll, we keep scrolling, and a lot of e-commerce sites, for example, have eliminated that whole pagination thing in favor of what they call infinite scroll. You hit the bottom, it loads a new chunk of stuff, right? So to see this is somebody who said, I have this idea for screens to open, Sting starts playing, and then it's really hard to navigate the website, and I think that's really going to benefit the business. This is somebody that shouldn't have been designing their own website. Let's talk about search engine optimization and why you need to be doing it. SEO is marketing. Who's heard of SEO? Okay. Has anyone ever executed a search on Google or any of the still existing search engines where it wasn't a blatant misspelling, but you got 0 results? You did. In most cases, when you search for something, you always get a result. And even a few years ago, when you misspell something, now they're telling you, maybe you misspelled it. Did you really mean this? The amazing thing about search engine marketing is that there is a result for something, for almost anything that you search, and somebody is getting that traffic. The top 3 results for any search on the web gets about 60 to 70% of the clicks. Back in the 1990s, the mid-90s, when I started working on the internet, it was very common to execute a search, and you get the page 1 of results, and then you hit next, 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 and you'd be at page 23 still trying to look for something. Who's ever gone to page 2 anymore? Like, it does not happen on a regular basis. It happens occasionally when you're desperate, but on a regular basis, you're more likely to refine your search than you are to hit page 2, right? So the way behaviorally that we use search engines has changed over time, but what hasn't changed is that the top results always get the most traffic. So when you think about the type of photography that you do and the type of photographic services that you provide, you want to be number 1 for Boston photographer, Somerville photographer, right? Battery wedding photographer. And the more niche you can get, the more success you're going to have with search engine optimization. Searching for your own name and finding your own website is not SEO. Duh, of course you're going to find your name, unless you have a really, really common name, in which case you're going to have to fight. In my case, I'm the only Alain Moreau out of the 6.8 billion people on the planet. My website comes up number 1 for my name. I'm much more interested in people finding me for like really good-looking Asian single guy in New York than I am for Alain Moreau, right? So again, you should think about creating a list of terms, maybe 20 to 50 terms that you want to be found for, and then actually search for those terms and see who is coming up in those top spots. I've talked to a lot of event photographers or like youth sports photographers, right? They go on the sidelines of these games, and they know who their competition when they're standing on the sideline. Oh, that's that guy, that a-hole over there, that douchebag. I hate him. He's a jerk, right? But when they execute something like Needham sports photographer or Needham youth sports photographer, they're like, who are all these people that are in front of me? So your real life competition is very different from your online competition. But everybody searches for everything nowadays. So it's better to be more successful on your online persona, in my opinion, than it is to try to be like, oh, I'm better than that guy standing on the sidelines. SEO isn't theoretical. Businesses are actually made and destroyed with SEO. Google, being the primary search engine that most of us use, they have over 200 different signals, parameters that affect the way that things get ranked. And these are actually changing all the time. And when I say that businesses are made and destroyed with SEO, I mean that quite literally. When Google makes really large-scale changes to the search algorithms, people lose their jobs because businesses fall from the rankings, they lose all the traffic, they lose revenue, and then all of a sudden you got to lay people off. Or search engine experts that are hired in-house that don't understand what happened get fired because they lose rankings. So it's weird how this digital culture actually has an impact. So as I said before, top 3 positions get about 60 to 70% of the click traffic. You want to be on the first page for terms that are important to your business. And SEO is not a short-term play. It's actually something you have to keep working on to get there. Because there's nothing better than displacing people over time. So what should I do in regards to SEO? Well, use a third-party website service. Again, there's too much stuff to consider when you're dealing with SEO. So SEO is primarily broken up into 2 major things. The stuff that appears on your website, like captions, descriptions, keywords, etc. And then there's all the off-page stuff. Links, social media, the strength of your domain, the strength of your links, etc., etc., etc. You'll notice that the stuff that you do on your website, like captioning, actually has a pretty small role in the overall SEO score. So the worst thing you can do is like when you're evaluating website software providers, you're like, oh, they say they have the best SEO, so I'm going to sign up with them. You keyword your images and you're like, I'm still not #1 for any of my terms. And the reason why is because just putting a keyword on your website is not going to displace you from the guy that built 2,000 links to his website over the past 5 years, right? But diversity is good. I said diversity is good from a revenue generation standpoint. It's also good from a traffic standpoint. This is a pie chart from Google Analytics. How many of you have Google Analytics installed? Excellent. You have to understand what's going on with your website. Remember how I said your website is a marketing tool? Can you imagine spending money on a marketing campaign and not understanding the performance of that campaign? So similarly, you're spending money or time or resources on your website, you better understand what's happening on your website. There are 3 major sources of traffic to your website. There are people who go directly to your website because they know the URL. That's direct traffic. There's referral traffic. So somebody has a link to your website, and people clicked on that link to get to your website. Referral traffic. And then there's search engine traffic. So somebody typed in a term, your website came up, and then they clicked on it to get to your website. I like to see a split of traffic. I like to see 33%. Or something in that approximation. When I see often people that have a lot of direct traffic but no search engine traffic, to me it's missed opportunity. Because search engine traffic is free, if only you would optimize for those terms. And again, businesses live and die by this. You've typed in something like Nikon DSLR, Canon DSLR. What comes up at the top most of the time? Amazon.com. Amazon has spent an inordinate amount of money trying to optimize every single retail product in the world to be #1 in search engine optimization so that you click on it and you buy from them. What's under Amazon.com? B&H, right? And then sometimes you'll actually see the camera manufacturer under that. right? It's crazy that retailers will displace the actual producer of the product through search engine optimization. But again, remember, the top few get most of the clicks. And Amazon, the other thing that they've done, right? We used to go and get those brochures at the camera store, right? When we were younger and we were like, oh, I really want that F3 or whatever it was. You go to the camera store, and I remember being in junior high and like looking at that thing and being like, I can never afford this camera, this is amazing, and look at all the specifications, right? You can get all of that specification information on Amazon.com now. They've spent a lot of time trying to avoid the customer who comes to Amazon from having to go somewhere else to find out about that. So they have specifications, customer reviews, user-generated reviews, video reviews. People who browsed this also looked at this. People who bought this also bought this. It's an amazing ecosystem that they've built, right? Because they realize that once they have the customer there, they better do something with that customer. Your website isn't a destination. As much as we like to think that there are hundreds of people on our website right now, you probably have 0 people on your website right now. Or you have 1 person on your website. It might be your mom. That's usually the case with my website. Your website is kind of like that empty bar you walk into. You're like, I'm ready to party. Nobody's here. So what are the problems? Well, you don't update frequently enough, being one of the things, right? It's just, it seems so hard to update the website. I don't know what to put up there. Unsubstantiated claim number 3, you might be boring. People might not want to go to your website because you're boring people. So given that nobody's on your website and you might be boring and you don't update frequently enough, you have to go to where your audience is. Where do you think your audience is? Exactly. So 800 million people on Facebook, right? Your audience is on social media. So when we talk about innovative ways to sell online, I believe social media is the innovation. I don't think there's one silver bullet. You're going to be like, Alan told me to put this widget on my website. Bam! It's raining money. I don't know what to do with all this money all of a sudden. It doesn't work like that, right? Nothing in the world works like that. It's got to be kind of a concerted effort in multiple areas to actually build and sustain a business and build your sales. So social media allows you to increase interaction between you and your potential clients and customers because they aren't hanging out on your website. And look at all these different social media options that we have. Now, you might think of social media as being Flickr and Twitter, but I would also argue that things like YouTube, Vimeo, Flickr, and Instagram are also social networks. Instagram, we'll talk about that later, so I won't ruin my punchline, but the commenting capability, the linking capability, the following capability creates social media out of things that you think are just like places where photos exist. Turns out that search engine optimization is also influenced by social media. So back in the 1990s, who remembers Alta Vista, right? Back in the day, keyword frequency was how you became at the top of the list. So you wanted to rank for zebra, just put zebra like 10,000 times on your webpage, and all of a sudden you're number 1 for zebra. But people figured out that's actually kind of dumb. That's people will spam you that way. So in the 2000s, Google looked at the number of links, inbound links. How many people are linking to you, and where, like, how influential are those sites? If the New York Times links to you, that's more influential than the little tiny community newspaper, right? So the link culture became the dominant one for Google. Well, now in the 2010s, the social graph becomes very influential. And why is that the case? Because seeing what your friends are doing and seeing the way that they're rating things gives you more of a personalized result. It's an advocacy-based search engine model. When I ask, hey, who likes this movie? Do I want to ask the world who likes this movie, or do I want to ask the people who really like Alien whether Prometheus was a good movie or not, right? Social media doesn't work by itself. You can't just be like, my marketing plan is social media. For businesses, social media is a complementary activity that amplifies your marketing. And this one you guys know already, so I don't have to belabor it, but let me rant on it a little bit. A single tweet or a single Facebook post is useless. Anybody use TweetDeck to sort of monitor your Twitter stream? So there's this product called TweetDeck, and when you log in, every person you've ever followed, it starts streaming all of the tweets that's happening. If you followed more than 10 people, the amount of tweet traffic that you get, you can't even keep up, right? That's the problem with tweets. Like, it happened and then it's gone. It's so ephemeral. So similarly, like, that's why it's okay to repost and retweet. And it's also why you want other people to be retweeting for you. You want to create a wall of social media activity in as many places as you can manage. And don't be shy about the fact that you're actually marketing. Tina mentioned it before. It's really hard for photographers to shift gears to be like, I'm self-promoting. I'm not saying self-promote all the time. That's like the people who Facebook every freaking thing. Oh, I woke up and my knees hurt, but I guess I'll go for a 12-mile run today. It's like, really? I was going to swear, but I'll refrain. But you know the type of people I'm talking about. Oh, my life is so bad. I guess I'm going to eat a bottle of chocolate. All right, social media ground rules. So set some time restrictions for yourself, because otherwise it's a big black hole. And then the 5 C's that we like to talk about: conversation, community, commenting, collaboration, and contribution. Those are all self-explanatory, so I won't explain them. Quality over quantity. Again, if you have something useful to say, please share it. But if you're just saying like, ew, I went for another run, and then I did yoga and Pilates all in one day. Okay, listen up, then help others. Right? People love to ask questions. I actually, one day when I was bench pressing, true story, I tore my pec. And 3 days later, I had this massive bruise on my bicep. So I was like, oh, social media, perfect. I took a photo of my bicep and I posted it on my Facebook page. And immediately like 20 people were like, oh yeah, look at you tore your bicep, blood is tracking into the bicep. You should go to the doctor for that. So you can be helpful when people are asking questions and become an expert to a community of people, right? Elevate your status within that community. Make your brand a deliberate decision. Like, don't be kind of willy-nilly with the way that you present yourself, right? Show your soul. Be analytical. This goes back to what I was saying before about your website being a marketing tool, and if you're not measuring the return on investment, then what the heck are you doing? You got to have Google Analytics, and you should learn how to use Google Analytics. It's not just being like, oh, 100 people came today and 200 came yesterday. It's understanding where that traffic is coming from and how traffic from Facebook differs from traffic from Twitter versus some other referral source, et cetera. Even Facebook, if you set up a fan page, has a bunch of analytics that you can look at. What's the gender split? Where are they coming from? What's the age range? How are they engaged with my content? So measure, analyze, and tweak all of these different areas: website traffic, the conversations you're having, the participation and engagement, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So let me show you a few examples. This is a guy off of Facebook, Ian Citron. And again, talking about niches, you know, we talked about military stock photography. Ian's niche is bodybuilders and fitness professionals. And so he told me on a daily basis, I try to post at least one photo on my Facebook wall, and in a lot of cases, 2 or 3. Well, think about who his audience is. His audience is aficionados of physiques, as well as the fitness competitors themselves who say, I need photos like that taken of me. So he generates a lot of business because a lot of his Facebook friends are fitness competitors. But he told me a story at the Palm Springs Photo Festival where somebody, a publisher from like Norway, saw some images of a muscle guy pulling a train that Ian had taken. And he contacted Ian and he said, do you have more photos of the muscle guy pulling the train? So he goes, yeah, okay. So he set up a private gallery on PhotoShelter that had a small edit of these muscle things. He priced them online, then he went to bed. And in the morning, he had made $3,000 worth of sale from these muscle things. Now, your mileage will vary. These results aren't guaranteed for everyone, right? But he was doing the right things to be successful by getting in front of an audience, by being persistent and having new content on a regular basis, and then making it very easy for customers to then convert, to give them, for them to give him the money, and it happened. Instagram, who Instagrams? Instagram, who doesn't know what Instagram is? So there were about 2,000 photo applications for the iPhone when Instagram came out 2 years ago. The only difference that Instagram really made was that they had this ability to be like the visual Twitter, where you could follow photographers, comment, and like different posts. The result of that is that they generated over 50 million users in a very, very small amount of time, and then they were sold to Facebook for $1 billion. That happened about 2 months ago or so. So I was sort of anti-Instagram at first because I couldn't really understand what was going on. And then I saw people like Sports Illustrated photographer Walter Yost. And this is an image from the NBA Eastern Conference Finals that's going on right now. And I saw this image, and it was clearly not taken with Instagram. So it's like, dude, that's cheating, man. You're like taking a photo on your $5,000 DSLR, you're uploading it to Instagram, you're putting a filter on it, and then you're making it seem like it's Instagrammed. But then I was like, you know what, Instagram is not about the art filter. Instagram is about the distribution capability. And it's about finding an audience where you wouldn't normally find an audience. Now, the question was posed when we were talking in the previous session with Tina, like, are people using Google Maps to sort of pin and see where people are? To me, a more interesting application is actually using your cell phone while you're on assignment, and a lot of photographers have done this, to take a different set of images. Images that are taken in a square format natively, images that have an art filter or a look kind of assigned to them natively. And how does that differ from the other work that I have? And will it attract, more importantly, will it attract a different audience? Because the people who are following Walter Yost on sportsillustrated.com aren't the people who are necessarily following him through Instagram, right? So Scott Strazzanti, who's a staff photographer at the Chicago Tribune, he has amazing street photography. And what he told me was, before I'd carry my DSLR and it would be impossible to take a photo. Because the moment you pull this huge thing up in front of your face, people will go like this, they flick you off, they walk away, you miss the moment, right? Street photographers for a century have tried to do the pre-focus, Leica, snap, right? But now with the iPhone, it's literally like, I'm just checking my email, right? And you get amazing moments as a result of that. Follow this guy and look at his stuff. It's really amazing. And look at this. 1,200 people are following him. Now, that might not be a huge audience, but that's a decent audience for a staff newspaper photographer. Yeah. Scott Strazzanti. Phenomenal work, and his normal non-iPhone work is also amazing. The cool thing about following people is you start seeing who's liking what, then you look at their stuff. My friend lives in Paris. His 12-year-old daughter is a prolific Instagrammer and has this amazing image, I think it's actually pretty phenomenal, of the Eiffel Tower. There seems to be some water droplets. She applied the art filter on it, gives it this like super romantic feel. And I was like, this is amazing. So I'm following her. She probably posts 3 to 5 images a day. Sometimes it's silly things of like, here are my toenails, but sometimes she's actually turning into a visual artist. And you think back to when we were kids and there was no digital and we actually pay for film. Who's read all the Malcolm Gladwell, 10,000 hours before you become an expert, right? Think of how these visual artists now, a 12-year-old girl with an Instagram phone, can get 10,000 hours of photography in before she's 18 and get feedback while she's taking the photos. It's amazing. I think we are really going to see an explosion of visual artistry happen in the next generation. Other places where social media happens. Tumblr, who saw Text from Hillary? Text from Hillary? So Text from Hillary are these, kind of snarky comments that people make on the internet overlaid on these images, and they actually appropriated an image from Diana Walker, who's a Time photographer, who was a presidential photographer, without her knowledge and without her credit. And in interviews after this was all kind of blown over, she said, I was really pissed because they didn't ask me for permission. On the other hand, if they had asked, I probably would have denied them. And if I had denied them, then this wouldn't have become an internet meme for 15 minutes. But as a result of this happening, a ton of people who had never seen Diana's work saw her work. Albeit it was one image, but it exposed a whole new generation of people to Diana's work, even though she's been working for like 30, 40 years. So it was really amazing. Now, the people who are hanging out on Tumblr aren't the people who are hanging out on Instagram, aren't the people who are hanging out on Facebook. Each social media site has a different personality, right? So similarly, even large brands like the New York Times are creating different types of presences in different areas of social media, and they don't see it as brand diffusion. They see it exactly as I stated it. There's a different audience here. On Tumblr, they happen to be a very visually oriented audience. So the Lively Morgue is the New York Times Tumblog, and they put historical photos, one a day, and they caption it, and they get an audience. So it's really, really kind of fascinating. Pinterest. Who's heard of Pinterest? The virtual pinboard. I'm very negative about Pinterest because it's tough for photographers to succeed, right? And the challenge is that for retailers, it's easy. When you put a nice image of like a shirt on Pinterest and people repin it and comment, then you can go and buy that shirt. But nobody's trying to steal the image per se. But photographers, the image is the product. So when people repin it, what they're really doing is creating distribution that you don't necessarily want. And then people can steal it because they have pretty large images that they're actually storing. Now, it may change, the dynamics of the way people use Pinterest may change. The thing I do like about Pinterest is it works into this curatorial culture that has developed over the past 3 years or so. What do I mean by that? One of the benefits of the internet is this rapid exchange of information. Take music, for example. Think about when you were a kid and how many bands and artists and songs that you knew. It's like I owned one record that was like Whitney Houston, Whitney. And then CDs came out and they were so expensive, they're like $15. I had like 3 CDs and a lot of mixtapes, right? But now you can go on Spotify or Pandora and you can listen to a new band every 3 minutes. And all of a sudden, our ability to become tastemakers is vastly expanded. And similarly, we see the same thing in fashion, we see the same thing with photography, etc. We have this huge curatorial culture, and Pinterest helps establish individuals as these curators who can find the following. So here's one gal, I think her name was Elizabeth Lee. The name of her virtual pinboard is Photography Worth Admiring. And she's a prolific pinner. And she's becoming a tastemaker for what her perception of photography is. Now, it's not my perception of photography. This, to me, is not photography worth admiring, but that's irrelevant. She has the following, and I'm not pinning, right? So her ability to influence the way people perceive, value, and then subsequently purchase photography is actually interesting. Imagine if she had 10,000 people following her. Imagine if everything that she pins was automatically pinned 200 times. Imagine if she pinned one of your photos and it sent a whole bunch of referral traffic to your website. And 200 people came to your website and you converted 1% of those people. And all of a sudden you made 2 sales that you never had before because of this girl. So you really have to understand how all of this kind of fits in together and why you want to be participating with social media, why you want to be identifying who these influencers and curators are on the internet. Then we have the good old blog, the much maligned blog, which I still like a lot. We have a blog for PhotoShelter, and back in late January, I wrote a post called The Rant, I Love Photography. Anybody read my rant? The rant was something that I read, something that I wrote in kind of like a weird transitionary time. My best friend's dad passed away. There's just weird things going on. And then I was also, because we published this blog and we published stuff on Facebook, I was seeing so much negativity. It's so easy to write negative things. It's really hard to write positive things, right? So it's kind of sick and tired of like, oh, you shot that with Instagram. You suck. That's not a photo, right? So I wrote this thing, and the result of it was, it just hit a nerve. It was the right post at the right time, and it was republished on Wired, Petapixel, and Huffington Post. So a single blog that was just like my feelings that day, that were kind of that showed a set of photos that I liked, that were slightly inspirational, has the capability of going viral. And who am I? I'm not a photographer. I'm just a guy on the internet.
Now, yeah, I have a company and some people know who I am, but the people who read this on Wired didn't know who I was, right? The way that things go viral on the internet is like nuts. It's hard to understand why some things are successful and why some things aren't successful, but I'll tell you what, if you're not participating in it, you're never gonna go viral, right? So when we go back to the guy who had the pictures of his kids duct taped to the wall, et cetera, he had a vision that he executed on. He's not throwing darts at the board. It's still a personal vision that he's executing on, but he found a way to get in front of an audience. Here's another reason to blog. This is Todd O. Young. He's a St. Louis-based rock and roll photographer at ishootshows.com. A way that he supplements his income is by writing equipment reviews. And you may or may not know about affiliate programs that all of the retailers have. But retailers will give you 15 to 20% of the sale if you drive traffic to their website, and that traffic results in a sale. So Todd will review this camera, for example, the Fuji X Pro 1. And again, it's just math. Let's say he gets 10,000 people to read it, 1,000 people click on the link to go to B&H, and then 0.1% buy it. They buy a $1,500 camera, he takes 20% of that. If that's happening with 20 reviews that he's written over time, a month, he's making a few $1,000 to help supplement his income. So you as an individual, if you're kind of a techno geek person and you like reviewing equipment, then this is an avenue to create revenue for your business. And again, one of the interesting things that's happened on the internet, Stella and I were kind of talking about this before, is there's so many enthusiasts out there. And like never before, there's an opportunity for photographers to become personalities to other photographers. The strobist, for example. Chase Jarvis, for example, right? David Hobby, the strobist, Chase Jarvis, Zach Arias, all of these guys are decent photographers, right? But they've found an internet following and subsequently have become massively internet famous. And now they can book speaking engagements and fill rooms and people will crowd and pay money to go see them. So again, it's not for everyone, but the diversification of revenue potential that exists now, it's not just about selling that one print. It's about selling services, products, et cetera. So why aren't you succeeding with social media? Because creating a Facebook account doesn't mean you are participating in social media. It actually takes a little more effort than that, right? You need to identify an audience. You need to plan to reach and engage that audience regularly. And you need to understand that social media is just one of many channels in which you are participating. So what's your goal for social media? Here's a few that I would say you might want to consider and write down. Build a following, manage relationships, get booked or sell, license your photo. Increase your online footprint so it's not just your website, it's not just Facebook, it's everywhere. Improve your search engine rankings. Get inspiration and feedback on what you're doing, right? I loved what they were saying about Thomas Van Houtreeve, his project and kind of crowdsourcing and edit. It's fantastic. And of course, reinforcing your brands. So a few more online considerations for you. Where can I sell? How can I sell more? You're not going to sell a ton of stuff on your website because, again, nobody's going to your website. It's not a fluid channel for selling stuff. What do I mean by fluid channel? Not a lot of sales volume, not a lot of people, right? So where are things being sold? Amazon.com, Craigslist, iStock, Etsy, right? Use tried and true techniques. Cole Haan sent me a sale that they were having for 40% off. I bought a pair of shoes. Did I need the pair of shoes? Nope, but I couldn't resist 40% off. Occasionally around Christmas time, Cole Haan sends me a little private 30% off. Do I need shoes around Christmas time? About as much as I needed around summertime. But I can't help myself. So a lot of websites have the ability, e-commerce websites have the ability to create coupons and sales and discounts, which you should constantly be pushing in your newsletter or your marketing efforts, right? Find marketplaces for images, Etsy, iStock Photo, Alamy. I'm not going to comment on whether I think Microstock is a successful venue for photographers, but they exist. Curated sites, 20 by 200. Once Magazine presented the other day, Humble Arts has an exhibition here. Excuse me. Get to know these people. Why isn't your work on the wall? There's like 50 photographers' works on the wall. Why isn't your work on the wall? And festivals and contests. I want to reinforce again, we did a webinar with National Geographic photo editor named Elizabeth Christ the other day. She said, you know, for the type of work that we do and for the amount of financial commitment we make to photographers to shoot a National Geographic story, we are not going to accept a photographer unless we get a referral from another photographer so that we know that that person can complete the job. And she said, I like to meet people at festivals as well. And I like to establish relationships over a long period of time. So you might not shoot for Nat Geo today, but if you establish a relationship over 5 to 10 years and you're doing really good work and you're building a reputation, you might shoot for them 10 years later, right? Don't just sell photos, sell services as well. IBM saved themselves by getting out of just selling computers and selling services. And lastly, you can read much more about all of this stuff by getting some of our free white papers that are available for download at photoshelter.com/mkt/research. So there's about 20 titles out there covering everything from Google Analytics to how to use crowdfunding to finance your project. So encourage you to download those. We have a new one every month. And a few other places that you can connect with us on our blog, at Facebook, on Twitter, and through our Vimeo channel. All right, how about some questions? Or should we go get a drink? All right.
We have a mic that we will give you if you have questions, so raise your hand.
Alan, first of all, thank you for the great talk. You talk about a lot of searchability, search engine optimization, and things like that. My understanding with PhotoShelter is if I go to Google Images, let's say, and I search for images, I'm not actually able to return any results directly out of PhotoShelter. Is that right?
They're linked to PhotoShelter, but the way that Bing and Google Images works is they kind of have an intermediary layer.
Right, the API.
Yeah, before you actually see anything.
Right, but you guys don't have an API for searchability by third-party sites, is that right?
Not directly, but we do feed. There are images. We submit every image that you upload into Google Images,
Okay.
and we submit a sitemap. So there are definitely images from PhotoShelter in Google Images.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
More questions, comments,
Jokes?
queries?
Thank you very much for a great presentation, and you get many fantastic leads. But and I'm relatively new to this. It seems to me that if I'll try to do a part of it, I won't have time to take one more photo. So
I know.
I feel overwhelmed. So you suggest where to start?
Well, it's like anything else. You need to decide for yourself what you can manage. It is not going to be the same for each person. Just for myself, I just want to say this because I am not a tech person. I'm overwhelmed by all of this. I spent a month or more what we call lurking. So I signed up for Facebook, I signed up for Twitter, and all I did was see what other people did. And see where I saw what they did cross with something I thought I could do. And then I started to do things on there, and it's grown from there. But you have to find a way to make it manageable for yourself. Maybe it's a little bit, maybe it's a lot.
I think you're going to have, it won't be worth your while to like engage an agency to do it. I mean, maybe if you found a kid who would be your intern. Yeah, you know, signing up for Facebook is as easy as putting your email and password in. The thing with social media is that you have to reach a certain threshold before you'll see any results, right? If you have 50 friends on Facebook, you just are not reaching wide enough an audience. But if you have 1,000 friends on Facebook, and the other interesting thing, like we've talked about search engine optimization being this thing that Google uses, right? But Facebook has something called EdgeRank, which is their equivalent of search engine optimization. And the way that EdgeRank works is the more that people like and comment and share your posts, the more frequently you're going to show up in other people's news feeds, right? So it's kind of a self-policing mechanism because those people that are always just vomiting about everything they're doing and nobody cares, that stuff is going to fall by the wayside versus posts that get super, super popular. So George Takei, who played Sulu on Star Trek, is a prolific Facebooker. And everything that he posts gets like thousands of comments and shares and whatnot. So again, as an extreme edge case, he's really tapped into an audience that wants to hear what he says and is willing to share and retweet that. So my suggestion to you, because Facebook has the largest audience, it's the most logical place to start. Create a Facebook account, start adding people that you know, start adding some people that you don't know, start finding interesting things about photography, right? And intersperse things about photography with your own self-promotion at the ratio of about 9 to 1. Self-promotion is 10% of the time, sharing information is about 90% of the time. That way you never piss anyone off, right? And that way when you have a show that's coming up or a book that you're publishing, you can use your ammo for that type of stuff. And it's, you have a perfect opportunity here. There's so much photography, right? You have stuff to write about. Oh, I saw a wonderful shark photography from the Humble Arts exhibit, right? And just like I talked about the wedding photographer stuff, you should tag the photographers in your post so that they're seeing it, right? And maybe they're curious, they start following you, they like your photos, etc. People like to be complimented, and people are generally complimentary back. And so, for better or for worse, that's the way it works. So let's play the game and see if it gets you further. Yep.
Wait.
I have a bunch of really nice photographs, and I want to put them up, but I don't know how to like copyright. I don't want people just to steal my photographs, because I have a really good eye, but I'd sell them for $1. I just don't want people to just steal them. I'll give them to you if you ask.
Yeah.
I don't.
So number one, you should consider copywriting your images.
Go to the government website,
Yeah.
the U.S. Government Copyright Office.
If you
And you
Google
can do
for
it,
it,
and you can do it online.
it's $35. You can register as many images as you want. You can upload them through the web. A lot of the trade organizations like APA, ASMP, MPPA have tutorials about how to do that. So that's one thing you can do, right, to protect yourself from a legal standpoint. Number two, you could consider putting a visual watermark on your images, right? A copyright notice, maybe your logo, and then a link to your website. To me, the thing that people always forget is the URL back to your website. The most obvious thing to do. A lot of people, you have to sort of figure out your level of comfort with security. Because, again, you can have massive distribution by getting your images out there, but people can also steal it. And I think of the super liberal attitude is obviously, I'm going to put everything out there and let people come back to me, and karma will work its way. And other people who are like, I'm not showing anything, because I don't want anybody's. I think that the solution is somewhere in the middle. But a visual watermark with a small set after you've copyrighted your images is a good place to start. Yep.
Hi, this is kind of along the same lines, and I don't know if you do this with PhotoShelter or not, but I've been kind of considering the whole copyright, watermark, blah, blah, blah. I found a site that I liked where if somebody tried to copy something from it, because I tried just to see like what the protocol and stuff was, it goes to invisible when you try to bring it to your site. And what is that? I don't know what that's called.
Yeah, we do that. It's called a transparent pixel overlay.
Yay! Okay, now I know what it's called.
So we do that with PhotoShelter as well. But there's, the fact of the matter is, if you're seeing it in your web browser, that image has already been downloaded to your computer. That's how web browsers work, right? It's not like it's a broadcast in television, and when you change web pages, it's gone. It's sitting in a cache folder on your computer the moment you see it. So that's why I think like we get overly concerned about image theft, not understanding actually that it's already been stolen. It's already on your computer.
I think the way I addressed that personally was I have like different levels of my photography, and I started with Facebook, like baby steps. To me, it's like a party. It's a blast.
Yeah.
And sharing the stuff that I don't mind is shared, and then there's other stuff that's going to be saved for websites.
Yeah, generally for security, I have a pretty liberal attitude because, again, like we have a very strong sense of self-importance, and I'm not saying that to be snarky. I'm just saying like we think our photos are great, and they are, right? But again, I bet if you looked at your Google Analytics, like not a whole lot of people went to your website in the past year. So what are you really scared about, Like, it's better to get the distribution until you're established and then try to figure out what's going on. You're not going to be successful at marketing if security outranks your marketing concerns. Yeah.
Down in front here, or, okay, over there and then in front, to your left, right, sorry.
Would you recommend posting daily if you have a blog? And if you are posting images consistently on your blog, how often would you recommend updating your website?
The consistency is more important than the frequency, in my opinion. When you look at something like search engine optimization, Google can actually tell when you last updated your website. And they're always looking for signs of life, what I like to call signs of life. You know, like when a hostage holds up the newspaper to be like, no, really, I was live yesterday, right? It's the same thing with Google. So to me, the consistency is more important than the frequency. But as Stella said, it really comes down to what can you manage in the course of your day. If blogging is too difficult, but Instagramming is easier, or uploading to Facebook is easier for whatever reason, then do that and just be consistent about it.
We had a question here. Wait.
Thank you. Is this?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know how many people this would apply to, but I take close-up photos of flowers right now, and I thought either through a blog or maybe through Facebook that I would write. I'm really interested in how flowers got their names, myths about flowers, and other things that are kind of like mysteries. And I thought about writing about that, using my photos for some of it, using other photos also if I don't have the picture. I don't want to also have a lot of frequency because of the amount of work involved.
Yeah.
But I wonder, is that a good way to bring in people?
So the challenge, I'll pick on you a little bit, which is this. A lot of people enjoy taking photos of flowers. Mm-hmm. And there are beautiful photos of flowers, and I'm sure that you have some of them, right? So the problem is that when a lot of people are doing it, even if you have kind of a hook on, like, you're writing about the history of the naming or something, it's still going to be very, very difficult to attract eyeballs to that. So I have seen some phenomenal photos of flowers that have gone viral. I've seen photos of like hummingbirds with strobes that have gone viral, right? So there's a lot of things that we enjoy taking photos of. But unless we're doing something that's pretty dramatically different than what our peers are doing, it's going to be hard to gain eyeballs and therefore SEO success for that stuff. So I would say that you have to follow your passion and you have to be passionate about what you're doing. But it sounds like just the subject matter alone is going to be difficult to have a lot of success from a search engine optimization standpoint and from a traffic standpoint.
Do you see another way that, doing something that is being done a lot, you could distinguish yourself?
Well, I've seen, so let's just talk purely visually, right? Mm-hmm. So for everyone, like everyone has something that they like shooting. The number one thing I would say is, how much of that type of photography have you personally consumed to understand what's going on with flower photography, for example, right? I've seen some lovely studio shots. I've seen some amazing macro shots. I've seen amazing X-ray photos of flowers, et cetera, right? If you're just going into the backyard and taking a photo, then I've seen literally 10 million of those photos, and I can find most of them are on Flickr, right? So that's a good sanity check. Go to Flickr or Google Images, search for the topic, and if your photos kind of fall visually into the same category as everything else you're going to see, then you just have to be honest with yourself and say, okay, I have to differentiate it. I can't tell you how to be more creative, right? I'm just a computer guy. I'm sure you can figure something out, but again, take those photos, create a really nice edit, throw it up on social media, and you're going to find out pretty quickly whether people think it's good stuff or not.
Thank you.
Flowers with naked people, he said.
But here's another thing. What if you contacted local garden clubs to let them know that you had these photos and that you were writing about the history of how flowers are named? What if you built an audience that maybe has seen other photos but finds something interesting in what you're presenting? It's all about how to get eyeballs there, so you have to think broader than just, I'm putting my photos out there and the world is going to see them. How can I find specific ways of having specific people see it?
I was thinking that could be my audience. I wasn't quite sure how I get them. I'd love to know.
Well, the other thing to consider too is like not all photography is appropriate for online. And in a lot of cases, when you're looking at it like a huge print, it has a very different effect than when you're looking at a small thing online.
Really?
And so I've walked into a lot of restaurants, I've walked into a lot of doctors' offices, et cetera, where there are images for sale because the artist said, let me put art in your office for free in exchange for the marketing. And again, if you find the right niche, you could be very successful doing that.
We have time for one more question. Whoop. You decide. I'm not.
Copyright, just Google copyright registration.
Thank you. With so much options on social media, should we decide which ones to use, or should we try to use them all? And the other one, for example, with Facebook, they can sell your stuff. So
Yeah, so the rights grab thing that every social media company has a rights grab, or they're like, you perpetually grant a license to us. I don't worry about that. The reason why I don't worry about it is that's not the reason why they have that. Okay? I understand that they could, in theory, take your image and put it on the side of an ad. And I know historically that's happened occasionally, but that's not why they're doing the rights grab. They're doing the rights grab. Instagram, for example, does the rights grab, number one, so that they can redisplay the images on Instagram and other sites, right? And number two, so that when they sell the company for $1 billion, they don't have to go back to you for a reassignment of right. So it's not as nefarious as you think, although they could do a much better job of making it less nefarious. So that's one thing. So to answer your question, where to start? Well, let's just say it straight up. You should be on Facebook because the most people are there. I think Twitter's a load of crap, personally, for photographers, right? For photographers, I think Flickr. Flickr's kind of dying out. Your mileage will vary, so I don't think it's a bad idea. I think they have good search engine optimization, so it's good to be up on there. I think Pinterest is bad for photographers right now. I think Instagram is becoming very interesting for photographers. So if I had to pick two, I'd do Facebook and Instagram. Thank you so much, guys. Great time being in Boston.
Thank you to Alan. Thank you to all. Thank you to our live stream audience. I want to say that at 4 o'clock, photographer David Hilliard will be doing a presentation. I recommend you all come to that. At 5 o'clock, we have the jazz event here at Battery Wharf, Fairmount Battery Wharf. Please come to that. We have the work on the wall. We have work upstairs. We have work on the grounds. And we want you to be a part of it. I want to thank, once again, our host, the Fairmount Battery Wharf, and our sponsor, TD Bank. Thank you all.
Yes. Give me a card. I'll email.